The Jewish legal right to Israel did not begin with the United Nations. It did not magically appear with the stroke of a pen in 1947. This right is rooted in a historical and legal context that predates the UN itself. Many people mistakenly believe that the 1947 partition plan was the basis for Israel's legitimacy. However, this plan was merely a non-binding proposal, never fully implemented. The Jewish people's claim to the land of Israel rests on much firmer ground. The Jewish connection to the land of Israel spans millennia. It is a connection woven into the very fabric of Jewish history, religion, and culture. This enduring link is not just a matter of faith, but also a matter of international law, recognized and affirmed through a series of binding international agreements. Understanding these agreements is essential to understanding the legal basis of Israel's existence. In 1917, the world witnessed a pivotal moment in the story of the Jewish people and their return to their ancestral homeland. The British government, then holding significant global influence, issued the Balfour Declaration. This document, named after British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour, publicly declared the government's support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration was not merely a statement of intent. It was a recognition of the historical connection of the Jewish people to the land. It also acknowledged the injustice of their centuries-long exile. The Balfour Declaration laid the groundwork for the eventual re-establishment of a Jewish state. It was a promise to right a historical wrong, and to provide a haven for a people who had endured persecution and displacement for far too long. Following the First World War, the victorious Allied powers convened in San Remo, Italy, to determine the fate of the Ottoman Empire's territories. The San Remo Conference of 1920 was a turning point in the legal recognition of Jewish rights in Palestine. This conference, attended by Great Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and representatives from other nations, formally incorporated the Balfour Declaration into international law. It recognized the historical connection of the Jewish people to Palestine and their right to reconstitute their national home in that land. The San Remo Conference was not a haphazard agreement. It was a carefully considered decision by the leading nations of the time, establishing a legal framework for the future Jewish state. Section 4. Mandate for Palestine International Endorsement of Jewish Rights. The San Remo Resolution paved the way for the Mandate for Palestine in 1922. This document, entrusted to Great Britain by the League of Nations, formally recognized the Jewish people's right to establish a national home in Palestine. The mandate explicitly recognized the historical connection of the Jewish people to the land and called for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This was a significant step forward. The League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations, had given its stamp of approval to the creation of a Jewish state. Section 5. The UN Charter upholding existing rights, not creating new ones. In 1945, with the creation of the United Nations, a new chapter began in international relations. However, the UN Charter did not erase the legal realities established by previous international agreements. Article 80 of the Charter, known as the Colonial Clause, specifically safeguards the rights granted under the Mandate for Palestine. This article ensures that the rights granted to the Jewish people under the Mandate were not to be altered or diminished by the UN. It confirms that the international community's recognition of the Jewish people's right to a homeland in Palestine continued, even after the dissolution of the League of Nations. Section 6. A right affirmed, not granted. The legal right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is not a matter of debate. It is a matter of historical record and international law. The Balfour Declaration, the San Remo Conference, the Mandate for Palestine, and the UN Charter all affirm this right. This right was not granted by any one nation or international body. It was recognized and reaffirmed through a series of binding agreements. The Jewish people's claim to their ancestral homeland is not based on the whims of international politics, but on a solid foundation of historical connection and legal recognition.